So today we're going to look at some mathematical practice on waves. So what is the period of a wave if its frequency is 10 hertz? So remember, the period is the time it takes for a wave to pass, and the frequency is basically how many waves, okay? So frequency here, hertz, our symbol for hertz is actually 1/seconds. Another way you may see that written is seconds to the -1. All right, seconds to the -1 is the same thing as 1/seconds. And now this makes sense because if period is time, here is our time in seconds. So the formula to find period, the period is going to equal 1 divided by the frequency. So if we wanted to set up our triangle, one is being divided by frequency, so 1 divided by frequency. And then our period goes in our leftover space. All right, so what is the period of a wave if its frequency is 10 hertz? So I'm looking for period, so I cover that up. So I'm going to do 1 divided by frequency, so 1 divided by 10. And now hertz is 1/seconds. That's my unit. So because this is a division, couldn't we also, if we were to take these units, since this is a division, essentially when you divide by a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal. So seconds is going to end up on top. Y'all see that? So when we write 1/10 hertz, seconds will end up on top. So when you divide this in your calculator, you get 0.1 seconds. What is the frequency of a wave if its period is 0.5 seconds? So frequency is 1 divided by the period. So when we set up our triangle, 1 is being divided by the period, leaving our leftover space for frequency. So if I want frequency, I'm going to cover that up. 1 divided by period. All right, so 1 divided by 0.5 seconds. And look, friends, this gives me a unit of 1/seconds, which is hertz. All right, so 1 divided by 0.5 is 2. And my unit for frequency is hertz. Now let me make this 2 look more like a 2 because my 2's and my z's kind of look the same. So let me distinguish between them. All right. Finally, let's do an additional problem. Now these first 2 problems are not on your reference tables. So when you look at your reference tables, you will notice there is no formula up here for determining period. All right, so you are going to have to learn that one. There's also not a formula that gives you the relationship between frequency and period, so you're going to have to learn that one as well. But there is a formula giving you a relationship between frequency and wavelength, which is pretty cool. All right, where v is our velocity of the wave. All right, and we know that velocity is speed with a direction. So the velocity of a wave is going to equal the wavelength times the frequency, where the velocity of a wave is 3.0 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. So again, this value right here is not provided on your reference tables, so you will need to know that a wave velocity, that's the speed of light, 3.0 times 10 to the 8 meters per second. So if we have a tuning fork that has a frequency of 280 hertz and a wavelength of 1.5 meters, let's calculate the velocity. All right. You will only use this velocity if you are not provided the two parts. All right, so we can only use this if we are not provided both the wavelength and the frequency, okay? Because different waves may have different velocities, okay? So in number 3, I was provided both the wavelength and the frequency, so this value right here, I'm not going to use. Let's set up our triangle. Always set up a triangle. Here I've got wavelength times frequency, so wavelength times frequency at the bottom. And our velocity is going to go at the top. All right, so if I want to find velocity, I am multiplying my wavelength of 1.5 meters times 280 hertz. Now remember, hertz is 1 divided by seconds. So what are my final units going to be? Meters divided by seconds, which makes sense because we're looking for velocity. So when I plug this into my calculator, I am going to get a value of 420 meters divided by seconds. You could have written this 1.5 meters times 280 hertz. And if you had showed me this setup, that would have been acceptable because hertz and 1 divided by second are the same thing. All right, so there is our final answer for number 3. Now, in our practice problems we do in class, we are going to practice when do we use this 3.0 and when do we not use it.